Hey there, welcome to the Healthy Vibes podcast. Today, guys, I have a conversation, interview, talk with a dear friend of mine, Jenni Spuler, and I pray and hope that you will tune into the entire episode because it was just so good. She is filled with encouragement for all of us, especially us moms during this time. She just gave so many good words of encouragement, good tips for our kids during this time, when we questioned God during this time, and just with life and challenges and just a lot of good stuff. And as moms, I hope that you enjoy this episode. So please stick with us till the end and grab your cup of coffee and enjoy. Thanks for being here. All right. Hey, Jenni, welcome to the podcast and thank you for being here with me. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, yes, I'm so glad to be here, and it's just so good to hear your voice, and I'm so grateful for this time to reconnect after many years of not living in the same city.
I know.
It's wonderful to get to have this conversation.
I know. I would say I'm excited personally just because it was such a good opportunity to actually talk to you. You know, it's hard to reconnect with people, but I was really excited that we're able to make this happen because you're just such an encouraging person and you always were to me and so many people I know. We all still miss you here in our little town. But I really appreciate you giving me time, and I know that I can't even do you justice in giving the background about you. So I want you to tell me and my listeners a little bit just about yourself, the Spuler life, because I love following along with the Spuler life, and your role in the church, because that's, I know, a big part of you and Jonathan, your husband, and what you guys have done over the years. So I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself to start here.
Sure. You know, it's so funny to try to answer that question, to try to define yourself. But
Right.
I guess my current situation is Jonathan and I have been married for 23 years.
Nice.
And when we married, neither one of us had any intentions of going into ministry. We both loved the Lord, loved the local church. But I think it was on our second or third date, I asked him the question, "You do not want to be a pastor, right?" And he said, "Oh, definitely not." And I'm like, "Okay, good. Like, we got to get that out of the way up front." And so, long story short, after 2 years of marriage, we just couldn't shake it that we knew God was calling us into something more, not just serving in our local church, but really laying down everything and just giving our lives to ministry. And so we've been in full-time ministry for almost 21 years. And we have 5 kids, and our oldest is a senior in high school. So all these things sort of define the season that we're in. But our beautiful kids, we have an 18-year-old, well, almost 18-year-old, 15-year-old twins who are 13, and baby Gage, who you remember because we were doing life together when I was going through that pregnancy. He is 10 years old. And
my gosh.
It's crazy. And so, we have now been on the Gulf Coast of Alabama for over 9 years. And my husband and I both have been working with an incredible church called City Hope Church. It's a multi-site church with locations across Mobile and Baldwin counties. That's the two counties on either side of Mobile Bay, down on the Gulf Coast. And so if we're not involved in something at church, we are traveling every weekend for soccer because our boys play just really competitive soccer regionally. So that's really everything in a nutshell at the moment. Is if it's not ministry or soccer or family, it's hard to find time for anything else right now. So
that's a lot in itself, though. It really is. Yeah. And I think that's exciting. I did not know that story. I don't believe about that conversation that you said you do not want to be a pastor. I don't think I knew that, which is such a turn to what I know of you guys and how I came to know you guys. So,
well, I've only said I never a few times. And I said I would never marry a pastor. I would never move back to Alabama because this is where I was born and raised. And I left when I was 17 and I was gone almost 20 years. So I would never marry a pastor and I would never move to Alabama. And the last thing I said is I would never have a dog. And we, we have a dog. And so I'm learning to
Oh,
just keep my mouth shut and just be ready to do whatever it is God asks me to do.
I sure
So,
love that. I didn't know any of those things, and that's that right there is encouraging because how many of us do say nevers, and
right.
look at that. You love the dog? What kind of dog is it?
Yes, he's a cutie pie. So it's been the prayer of Emma's for as long as she could talk, my 13-year-old daughter, that she was just born to love animals. And so, literally, this dog was given to us a year ago. I said no 3 times. And then my mother-in-law gave me a precious correction of kind of opening my mind and my heart to letting Emma's dream come true.
Oh,
But he's a little itty bitty schnoodle. So he's part poodle, part schnauzer.
oh my gosh.
He's a cutie pie.
Too cute. Well, Emma with all those boys, because all the rest of your kids are boys. I don't think you
Yeah.
said that. I'm not
Oh,
sure
I
in the
okay.
beginning,
Yeah.
but
4 boys, 1 girl.
she should get that puppy, right? Like I grew up with just 2 brothers, and I feel like I should have got a puppy growing up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's got 4.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good story. Um, well, I know that you've done work in the past, and I know you still do, and probably just in I say work, but just in general of how you live your life. I feel like encouraging and helping moms along the way. Because even the person I knew here, I feel like that was such a time for all of us with little people and new mothers. And I just feel like we were all kind of just winging it and getting,
Yeah.
getting
Yes.
by and surviving. And it was such a good little mom group that we knew in those preschool days of first time dropping kids off.
Hmm.
But I know when I look at the city life and things I've seen in your posts, what is there something specific you do with moms? And with everything going on right now, and I don't even think I need to say in the world, there's so many things. How would you encourage moms, just in general, during this time?
Yeah, it's a heavy season,
Hmm.
and I think moms in general typically carry the emotional weight of whatever is happening at home.
Hmm.
With your spouse, with your spouse's work, with your work, what's going on with your kids, with grades or athletics or anything else, just normal season. You know, like I just feel like God has graced us with this empathy to feel what our families feel. Um,
Right.
and so during this season, I don't know a mom that just hasn't really just felt the heaviness of navigating the unknown with their kids or with their spouse. And so, I think that I, being on this side, I know we're not on the other side of things, but I think we're on the more hopeful end of things.
Right.
But at the beginning, I try to think back about what it felt like mid March and early
Right.
April, and just the absolute panic and fear of, yes, illness, that was one thing, but for me as a mom, that really is not where my heart felt heavy for my kids. My heart felt heavy as they were navigating loss. You know,
Right.
their varsity soccer seasons getting canceled. My 13-year-old son, his middle school championship soccer week getting canceled. Like
Mm,
everyone else, everyone lost something. And
right.
I don't know if there's ever been such a collective season of grieving for young people, for kids,
I
for
agree.
teenagers. And I know just like initially, it just took me some time to kind of find my footing. It honestly took me some time to figure out that's even what we were navigating. Um, that it was everyone all at once was processing loss. And so, um, in loss, they're just if we're not careful, it's a slippery slope. Like loss can lead us to hopelessness or lack of hope for the future or lack of faith or any of those things, and that's totally normal and natural. Um, and so, just for moms, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but kind of just sharing for me what I quickly realized is I had to be a voice of hope. I had to be a voice of hope. I had to speak hope constantly, not false hope, but true hope, like to our son that was canceling his junior soccer season. He was named to this huge honor in the state of Alabama, and he didn't even get to play that all-star game, where the college recruits would have been, just everything canceled,
Right.
which then leads you to think, well, then my next steps might get canceled, right? Like the opportunities that could have come from that might get canceled. And we just quickly began to define how, like in our family, in our home, we wanted to make sure our kids understood that absolutely nothing, not a virus, nothing can rob the purposes that God has for their life. Nothing. And so, yes, they may be discouraged, disappointed, exhausted, grieving. And as moms, we grieve with them. But I think right now, like as moms, which more moms are at home now more than ever with virtual school and remote work, and like we've got to be the voice of hope in our homes. And every home is every family. There's like a different structure. I've got dear friends where mom works full time and dad's home with kids. So every family has their own structure that's unique to them. But
Right.
I would say that if there's not someone in your home as the voice of hope, then that if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, wow, we don't have that voice in our home, like then that voice is you. Like God's called you. Um, my screensaver just went on. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
sorry.
No
Um,
problem.
So God's called you not by accident, but by intention to parent in this time, in this place, during this virus or whatever else we may be facing. It's not some big accidental oops that happened. So I maybe didn't feel prepared for this season, but that doesn't mean God didn't call me to it. And so as I lean in and just trust Him, I have to believe He's going to prepare me along the journey. I mean, no one came knowingly prepared into this season because this has never happened in
Right.
our
Right.
lifetime. And so I think it's a great reminder of how true our dependence on God really must be always. But in this season, there was, at least for me, there was no other option.
Absolutely. And I love, you said you were all over, but you kind of hit several points I wanted you to hit because I said many times during, first of all, I feel like sometimes it's easy as things progress to forget what's still weighing so heavy,
Yes,
especially on our kids, because I
yes,
feel like those ages I watched and I just, you're right, like they needed the hope. And I feel like what you just said is very encouraging because as a mom who can get, I feel like we're all very tired. Like this has been
yes,
going on. I talked to a mom yesterday, and that's exactly what she was speaking of. It's the this, the that, the mask, this is canceling this,
yeah,
everything, like nothing is consistent, everything's changing,
right.
and we're tired, like you're tired.
Exhausted, absolutely exhausted. Yes,
And rest, I keep saying, rest is so important, but also so hard, for so many people for many reasons. But I love what you just said. I think even in a time of feeling tired was very encouraging to be a voice of hope because it's very empowering sometimes as a mom to say, be frustrated with everyone in the house. Why is everyone like, in such a bad place? But hey, we can be that voice of hope for them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes we're not being it because it's easy to get caught up in all of it. So
right.
that is empowering to be that. So I love being the voice of hope. So when you talk to your kids, I love what you just said. Is there anything else that you felt help your kids navigate right now? Because I think it is such a hard
Yeah.
time.
I think that hopefully most parents are doing this, but we all just need the reminder to just really have times where we're listening to our kids. As a mom of four boys and one girl, naturally, just say stereotypically, my boys don't tend to just overly share their emotions, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and especially when life's super busy, it's a quick coming and going. And how was your day? Good. How was soccer? Great. And then suddenly we were just all on top of each other for, gosh, was it 6 months, 5 months? And
Mm-hmm.
um, yes, frustrations were high. Everybody was loud. I was working full time from home. I'm trying to get everybody off Fortnite so I can get the internet to work. Um, but really trying to make sure you have real conversations you know, and like, how are you doing? Like helping them even understand how they're feeling. And I would say that we had some in-depth conversations that I never expected to get to have with my teenage boys.
Right.
And it was just in allowing them to talk and not silencing them, when they were to say not something negative or something that sounded like they were, lacking hope. You don't say, oh, but don't feel that. It's going to be fine. No, like what they feel is real, letting them feel validated in what they feel. So encouragement is not correction necessarily, because I've always, especially the 6 months, I've needed to give my kids permission to feel, like permission to grieve is really what we said a lot the first few months is you have permission to grieve. And I would actually say it is essential that we are helping our children grieve so that, like, long term, as everything recovers, that they come out of this healthy um, and ready, ready to engage, ready to believe again, right? Ready to plan and dream and all the things. Um, but part of being able to have new beginnings is recognizing where there's been loss and grieving. And so, something that one of the kids said early on was, why would I even try? Like, why would I even get excited about school starting? Why would I even get excited about a season starting? It's just going to get canceled again. Like, and so we were able to talk through that was actually fear based. He was scared of feeling the disappointment that he had just come through. And so he was terrified to get his hopes up again. And so that was understandable,
Right.
that was so validated. Yet we needed to coach him through finding hope. And honestly, for us, like, hope has got to be more than just being happy and being encouraging, but the only hope we've really been able to, the only sure hope is helping our kids understand that, like, God has a purpose for their life. Like, their identity is in Him. And so even if the world is stripped away, like, what we're left with is we're still who God says we are, you know? And so that's a lot to understand, even at our age. But to begin to try to grasp that at 10 and 13 and 15 and 17, um, prayerfully, it's the beginning of truly knowing who they are in Christ. It's like when somebody goes through a job loss or a marriage has ended or something, suddenly they don't know who they are, um,
Right.
because their identity, what they knew of themselves, has been stripped away. Well, I just feel like the entire world population collectively just went through that. Everything we thought we were came to a screeching halt as far as work
Exactly.
or performance or anything else. And so, I mean, in my word, that's why there's this escalation in mental illness issues and anxiety disorders and suicides. And I mean, people are desperate for hope and desperate for identity.
Desperate.
And so, gosh, my prayer, and, with us being in ministry, our prayer from day one has just been like that Jesus would be known in this time like never before, because that is the answer. So when I say, like, being the voice of hope, to anyone listening to this, like, even when there appears to be no hope, there is hope because Jesus is hope.
Which what you with all you just said makes me want to go in like several directions, but you touched on several points. But
Sorry.
what you no, it was perfect how you said it, because what you just ended on is so good. But what about that person right now that is questioning God more than ever
Mm,
in their
goodness.
lives, or
Yeah,
had a hard time in the first place? Like,
sure.
what do you say to them to not let them completely walk away, or still believe that there could be hope? That
Right.
person, like some of us, I feel like, because that was a lot of my prayers, with my family was, I believe, I just want us to keep getting closer to God during this time.
Mm-hmm.
We went, God and our family, let's not get lost in what's going on in the world. Let's not, but I know that there's people that might not have that person speaking to them, or a mother that's,
Yeah.
at her wit's end right now. Like, what would you say to
Mhm.
her?
I think that first of all, like, I think we sometimes think that when we question or doubt our faith, where we question or doubt God's faithfulness, that we think that somehow disqualifies us. Like, um, we kind of take ourselves out of it rather than it's almost like surrendering your faith before you really meant to, just because you
Hmm.
simply think because you have questions that you're already too far gone, you know?
Right.
And
That's good.
and I think that something that is I you know, God can handle our doubts, you know? Like he can handle it. There's room for that. And so I think that the most important thing to do in a time when you're questioning faith is first of all try to understand why. Like, why are you questioning faith? Or probably because of some unmet expectations, just disappointment or something you believed. Like, well, if God is good, then this wouldn't have happened. Like, just somewhere in there, there's a disappointment. And but but I think too often we just get hurt or disappointed. We just move on and let go, and we never really bring it to God. We never just give it to him and say like I'm struggling with this. Like this is kind of a mess and I don't understand it. And it there's no magic answer except that this faith journey, the older I'm getting, the more I realize how little I know. And
Mhm.
that's not what I thought would happen 10 years
Right.
ago and 15 years ago. I thought
Truth.
I'd get to a place where I would just feel so sure and like checked every box. And now I'm ready just to, I don't know, just live on this mountaintop. And I'm just like the older I get, it's so humbling that the more I know of God, the more I realize the less I know of God. Like I will never complete. It's not a course. I'm never going to complete this journey. Like this faith journey is lifelong until the very last breath we breathe. Like there's no finish line until eternity.
Hmm.
And oh my gosh, like someone maybe tried to tell me that early on and I just didn't hear it because I'm like, that's just not how I thought it worked. But it's crazy how the more you accept that the less you know, if that makes sense.
Yes, it
The
makes sense.
more secure you are in Christ. It just doesn't make sense. It's like it's not math that makes sense on this earth. But I would just encourage the mom who feels um, so maybe abandoned or betrayed because of all the loss and the hurt and just wonders like where on earth is God in this? Why would he allow this to happen? And I just know like there's a lot I know and there's a lot I don't know, but I know God's heart towards us is good. I know that. Like he is a good father. And yet I also know that we're on this side of heaven. Like we live in a broken world. There is
Hmm.
sin, there is heartache, there is disappointment. And so not everything that happens to me is a reflection from the heart of God. Sometimes it really is just the sin of man creating pain that God never intended.
Right.
And yet, God is good. He is still my provision. He is still my peace, even when everybody around me disappoints me. And so I would just encourage people not to think that their doubt disqualifies them. Take it to God. Take your doubt to God. He will not reject you, you know?
That's so comforting. And I love that. I wrote that down. God can handle our doubts. I've never really thought about it that way. And that is so simply to say that just because you're doubting, it's okay.
Yes.
I like that. And it's just like everything, I always tell my kids, it's like you just said, also you said, don't silence your kids, you know, and
Yeah.
I think that is so good for us parents at this time too.
Yes.
Because it's okay for them to doubt. It's okay for them to question. It's okay. But if we don't keep our mouths closed, which, you know, I believe all of what you're saying, and I can be the first to like talk when they're trying to talk. And I've really been practicing trying so hard to just let them talk
Yeah.
regardless, and not to, like you just said, if they're even if it's complaining, grouchy, questioning, whatever it
Yeah.
let them voice what they're voicing. And
Yeah.
that is so good for all of us to hear, because I think sometimes we think like we're always supposed to be parenting, we always have to be teaching, we all, because it just happened to me yesterday with something my oldest said, and I began to explain something to him, and he said, "Oh, why did I even tell you?" And I was
Oh,
like, "No, no, 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 back up, back up." I was
right.
not going to criticize you or judge you, or I
Yeah.
was just going to tell you something that I felt like could help you in this, is what I was.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
I shouldn't have. I should have let him finish and not even. So that's so good to not silence them and let them have
Yeah.
the permission to talk.
Yes. And of course, of course within reason, but you think about like when you're sharing your heart with a friend and you don't really feel like they're listening, they're just coming in with ideas or suggestions or um it's not always helpful, Sometimes genuinely what you need is just to be heard, you know.
Hmm.
And really when people are trying to jump ahead of you and solve it for you, you feel like they're looking past maybe even your pain. They're just trying to fix it so you'll be quiet. At least that's how I
Right.
feel. And
That's true.
so, my mom was a counselor, and so something that she always would say to us is, when we're sharing and expressing pain or whatever, is she just would always say, "I'm so sorry you feel that way." And so
Mm.
it wasn't offering the solution, but it was just offering what I felt. And that was, I was seen, that the
Right.
way I felt mattered. And even sometimes I think in parenting, we may not be sorry for the consequence because maybe we're the ones bringing the consequence to our children. So we know that's a necessary part of the process, but we are sorry for how they feel.
Right.
We are sorry that it's
That's true.
bad.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Just like you said in the very beginning, we carry all of that. And I think that's the hard part as a mom, because we do carry
Yeah.
all the emotional weight of
Yeah.
everyone in the family.
Yes, and I will say that, like you, Kelly, I've got friends that are homeschool moms. I have friends who are vice presidents. I have friends who are school teachers. I have friends who are pastors. I have, I just have, it doesn't matter like what your path is for your family. Whether a mom is a homeschool mom or a corporate mom, I don't know a mom who does not carry the emotional weight of her home.
Absolutely.
There's not
I
a
would
there's just
agree.
not a situation where I have ever seen someone feel exempt from that.
You're right. And I think sometimes we think that maybe, people think because I'm consumed with this, I'm not consumed with that. But you're right.
Right. Yeah.
It's and we might just not voice it.
Mhm.
But I also think it's good to know, because some moms might think they are overly sensitive or overly emotional or holding on to too much, and that's such it's just a it's a mom thing, like
Yeah,
that is what we do.
it does.
And and that's why we need God even more for our own self, for all that we're carrying to give to him, because I feel like a lot of that, I've gone back to that movie, The War Room, so many times, but I'm sure you've seen that, right?
I
Where,
haven't. Can you believe that?
oh my gosh, you have to. And I was the same until I had several people telling me, and a friend of mine kept pushing me and pushing me. But it's really about giving your fights and giving your things to God, and it's about a marriage. But even with my kids, I go back to it and I think whatever it is I'm holding on to that day, it's I feel like that is what I pray about, God taking that over for me, whatever it is, whatever the emotional that I can't change, or but it really does help to
Yeah.
give it up to him.
Yeah.
So kind of along the same lines, but before we leave our kids, I want to know, like, do you have any suggestions, I feel like, to moms, as especially as their kids are getting older, to keep God in their kids' hearts? I feel like the older
Mm,
they get, you have your daily routine, or you God is in the conversation, the prayers, the whatever it is you're already doing in your life. But I do see it gets busier. And as one of my homeschooled is now, he's actually in school.
Oh,
Time is
yeah.
short. And
Yeah.
I said it all along. I love homeschooling because I always felt I had so much time. Like we would stop whatever we were doing to have conversations about whatever it was that was on our heart for the day. But do you have any suggestions as you get in the busyness of just keeping God so close in
You
their
know,
hearts?
I feel like this first suggestion sounds so simple, but feel like it really needs to be heard right now. But um, is really making attending church as a family a priority. Um, that there's a huge decline in church attendance, of course, because of COVID.
Right.
Um, there was a decline in church attendance before that, and now as churches are reopening, what a lot of churches are seeing is young families aren't coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe you have to be in a physical building to have an encounter with God. That's not it at all. But there is something powerful about being in that gathering and having your child it's not something you have to argue about. It's not something you have to discuss or decide each week. It's just established. And at least it is a message or an environment where they are receiving truth each week
Right.
outside of your voice. And so I think that's a really important thing, is making sure there are environments where they're being taught by other people than just you. Um, because, with teenagers, just the honest truth is you could say the same thing that the pastor's going to say, and they just hear it differently when it's from someone else. It's just how it is with teenagers.
Absolutely. Of
Um,
course.
and then I would say too, every church does youth ministry differently. And so there's not one right way. But what I have really loved and valued about our youth ministry these last couple of years, now that I have 4 teenagers, is we have like a small group model. And the kids, even though it's a large gathering, they always break up into small community, and that having community, like having actual real friends who are also on this journey, um, is really important. Really important. Even if teenagers don't have deep talks with these friends or anything else, they have to know they have safe people, if they needed to talk. And so that's really important. And then I will be honest, with social media, with having teenagers, I personally use that a lot. Like if I see a clip or something on Instagram, I'll direct message it to all my kids, and I won't even ask them about it. We don't They don't even have to talk to me about it. Um, but I'll just send them things, drop them things. If I know they're dealing with something, one of them was just dealing with a situation with a lot of gossip going on, and so I didn't give too much advice, but I did send him like 3 YouVersion plans, um, that he could choose from, and I just said, "Hey, I really think this would help you understand what's going on. It would help you understand how important it is to not get involved in gossip and tearing others down,
Right.
Um, I just try to give something practical, you know?
That's
Um,
good.
yeah,
I like that. All of those are good. Because I know with church, that's exactly how it is here. Because, they're taking reservations, or there's
right.
mass, or there's not so many.
Yeah,
So it's harder. And then you add in the weekend sports,
exactly.
which we love sports too. We have a family of sports as well. But sometimes I, I'm, I'm crazy in the sense of how it can really suck the life out of a family, even though you love
It's
sports, because
true.
it's so much.
It's true. And I would say that, prior to COVID, our church already had online experiences, but I would say now, because of COVID, nearly every church has
Right.
online availability. And so, we're as busy as the next family with sports, and the boys and I are on the road a lot on Sundays, but we all know, like, if it is humanly possible, we're going to have it on in the car through the speakers. um so we can just be in sync, like, with where church is at.
Right.
We're going to be engaged with worship, and we're going to hear the teaching, and we might have to cut it short to get to the field on time, but we're going to do our best. And I just feel like that discipline we really sell it way short, how important just that discipline is to just model for our kids. Just the value of attending and being part of a local church. It's probably one of the most life-giving things we could ever teach our children.
That's good, Jenny. And I think you're speaking to a lot of people, including myself these days, just because it's hard to get back for all of the
It
reasons you
is.
said. But
It's yeah,
but you're right. And that's you're speaking the truth, and I love that. Now, let
yeah.
me ask you, day to day, like Monday through Friday, is there anything at all? Because I know, like, you have 5 kids, different directions. Is there anything you do in your home that you feel like, or not as much with everyone going different directions?
It's so interesting the way Jonathan and I both grew up. We both grew up where it was like there was a set devotional time and a set family devotional time, and it was very. Our parents were amazing, and we, we're so grateful for our upbringings. But I would say there was a little more rigidity to it, a little more structure to it, and our lives are so crazy. We've gone back and forth with it, and we have just felt for our kids and their personalities, we have felt like something super structured would be counterproductive. Um,
Right.
because because of the age they're into. When they were younger, oh my word, it was like reading Bible stories in bed every night, and
Mm-hmm.
years and years of that. But I would love to crawl in bed and tuck in all the kids still, but that's not necessarily what happens. I fall
It's
asleep before
right.
I fall asleep before them. But I would just say that no, we don't have like necessarily a daily family rhythm. Um, but I would say also is it's a part of our conversations constantly. Like we really try that like God is woven through our conversations. If they're struggling with something, if whatever, we're asking them, have you prayed about that, or how can we pray for you? Like that kind of dialogue, not real churchy and religious. I just mean like an honest, like lifting each other up atmosphere.
And I love that message because I feel that, first off, I think a lot of us put so much pressure on ourselves. Like, we're not getting the daily devotion. We're not doing, exactly what you first described. It is okay to do your family, whatever works for your
Yeah.
family. But I really like how you just said, just in daily conversations. And
Mhm.
I just think it can be not intentional in families, but that's such a simple light go on, because I even think sometimes I don't bring it up, and after I think I should have just said. And it's just so good to think of it that way when you're having conversations, to bring it up. So
Yeah.
that's a very simple, wonderful, and it
Yeah.
could be, it might be an awkward thing or a hard one for someone to try if you're not in that routine with your kids and your family.
Yeah.
But I love the start today. Like,
Yeah.
when you start having conversations, once you start it, it just gets more comfortable and they get used to
Yeah.
it. And amazingly, like you said, you don't have to follow up or hammer it in,
Yeah.
but they will think of things that you've told
Yeah.
them along the way. Like, so
Yes. And I would
I,
say too is that the more you are feeding yourself, like the more as a mom that you are being encouraged and doing daily devotion and reading scripture, and it's just going to flow into your parenting.
absolutely.
It's going to be this very, very natural thing that happens, super organic. I think sometimes when we're early in our walk with Christ or early in faith, we feel like, okay, I've got to read that. Okay, now I've got to figure out how to say that, or teach that to my kids.
Hmm.
But not to feel that pressure. I just think the more you sink into scripture, the more you just sink and get saturated in the gospel for your own life, the natural thing that happens is it spills over and it affects the lives around you. And so I didn't realize that's sort of been my parenting approach is I know I'm not the mom to my kids if I am not literally just like drenched in the gospel. Like if I'm not reading my Bible, um, my kids can tell.
Oh,
I mean, I'm just not nice. I mean, I'm not. I'm going to be more short tempered. I'm going to have less grace. I'm not going to be great at forgiveness and keeping short account, like, but it's just
Right.
supernatural. It's not natural. It's just supernatural that when we're in scripture and we're just soaking it in for ourselves, that is, I think, the greatest ministry to our children, is because it's going to flow into conversations and situations organically.
So true. And not beating yourself up, because, like you just said, we all fall off. And that's the thing. It's easy, no matter
Yeah.
what we are doing most days or trying to do, we all fall off. And don't beat yourself up. Just be
Yeah.
aware, because I get the same when I'm short tempered, and I can tell when I'm like, okay, I need to get some rest and get back on track and get back into starting my day where I started, in the word or in my devotion or
Yeah.
prayer, rather than, just rushing into the busyness of the day.
Yeah.
So what about marriage, Jenni? To shift the gears a little bit,
Okay.
because of course, in all of what you're describing, and your both of your backgrounds and conversations, any tips with everything going on? Because there's a lot of strain on marriages, I know, and marriage is
Yeah.
hard anyways, and
Yeah.
the busyness of this world, I feel like, and the way we're pulled, and then you add what's going on now with so many people, um, home and in different routines,
Yeah.
and not getting their escape or the stress with work, like, just everything is so different.
Yeah.
Any
Goodness.
I know,
I
goodness.
just feel like there's, like anything, but, I think marriage, of course, is probably the most pressure packed relationship that can exist, on planet Earth under normal circumstances.
Right.
And I think the last 6 months, I know we've seen it here in our church, there's just been a lot of crisis in marriage. And, um, I don't have all the reasons why. I do think sometimes it's because when we all came to a screeching halt and the pause and the silence, all of a sudden we had to pay attention to some unhealthy things that have probably been there a long time, but the activity kind of could keep us distracted from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was just a lot at once to process. But so then you add financial strain or health issues or anything else, it's just going to magnify whatever pressure is already there. I almost wish I could go grab Jonathan and have him come talk for a minute, because anytime I hear him talk about marriage, I've actually never heard anyone talk about marriage the way Jonathan is able to. And the way he does a lot of premarital counseling, and the way he talks about just the truly beautiful creation of marriage, the most reflective, it's the most godlike relationship on earth, that union that he created between man and woman. And the way Jonathan talks about it, because he's like, we always tease, like, I'm a very black and white person. Like, give me a list. I want to check off some things. He is like a romantic, it's about
Oh,
setting the stage and the journey and the picture of how things should go. And so even how he talks scripturally about marriage and why it's so beautiful and important and worth fighting for, it's like you feel just kind of swoon into this, like, oh my goodness, yes, I want a healthy marriage, um but it's true, like, it's biblical, it's God ordained. And so there is nothing on earth that comes against more attacks than marriage. Because in a beautiful marriage where two become one and truly have the best interest of the other in mind, and have a sacrificial love, willing to lay down oneself to see the other flourish, and vice versa, um, like nothing can come against that, right?
right.
And so, my word, no wonder everything tries to come against it. And so, I know just in this season of life, which maybe this is the season of those listening to this, we've been married a couple decades and we're raising teenagers, and we're trying to help them have their dreams come true. And it's just complicated. It used to be just me and Jonathan. That was simple. Well, even though it's all good, it's super complex now. There's all these people, like, in our home. There's just so many. And we tease, like, sometimes at night, like, the noise in the kitchen is so loud. Like, when everyone is talking and there's 5 conversations going on at once, and I can't hear one person, because we'll just kind of say under our breath to each other, like, oh, we have so many kids. Like there's so many of them.
That's so
Um,
funny.
and and yes, we love being parents. We feel called to be parents. We're so grateful God's entrusted us to launch these kids into all that God's called them to. But I think what gets fuzzy in marriage and family is we kind of shift what was our original calling and we sort of trade it for this other thing that developed, and kids take the front seat and kids become priority, and um, it's not the kids' fault. And that's not what I'm saying. It's not a
Right.
conflict created by the kids. It's a conflict in us that we cannot surrender our marriage um, for our kids. Because, first of all, that's not giving them anything. That's not giving them one step ahead in life at all if we surrender marriage in order to somehow, we think, serve our kids better. I believe the best thing we can give our kids, the best thing, if humanly possible, is to give them the picture of a healthy marriage in the home where they're being raised. I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give kids. And, my husband and I are both in ministry. We love God and we still have challenges, So having challenges in marriage doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means, my goodness, you're just living in community. It's like, especially during 6 months of COVID, you spend this much time in one place with people, every little thing's starting to get on your nerves, and so
Absolutely.
that's normal. That's totally normal. But I do think in this 6 month period, a lot of people have realized, maybe for the first time, they've recognized there are some like roots of like some real unhealth in their marriage that they didn't know was there, just honestly didn't know. And so I'm a big believer in counseling, huge believer. I don't think you have to be in crisis to have counseling. I think we all can benefit from counseling, but finding a really good marriage counselor um, can be one of the best decisions you could ever make in your marriage. And if you don't know where to look and you don't know where to start, go to your church and ask a pastor. Maybe meet with a pastor first on just talk through some things and then see where they can refer you, because I think that too often we can typically not see our situations as clearly as when we lay it out and have somebody else look at it and dissect it and analyze it with us. um, that more clarity can come more quickly, I think, when you bring in that third party. And so it just takes what can seem like maybe a pressure cooker or what feels like a bomb that's about to explode. You bring in that third person and you just begin to deactivate it. You begin to deactivate all that tension just very intentionally. Like I'm trying to find the word I'm thinking of, but I keep thinking about like a bomb squad. Like what are they called? What do you call that? Like they defuse a
Right.
bomb.
Yes,
Um,
right.
yeah,
Um,
that's the picture I keep kind of getting in my mind. Is I think that's where a lot of marriages are. It's like you feel like this bomb is ticking, and you're terrified what's going to happen when it goes off. You know,
right.
and the reason for that bomb ticking could be a million different things. It could be that one of you lost your job during COVID and you can't pay your bills. It could be that you somewhere along the way you just stopped being friends and you stopped enjoying each other. You just stopped, you completely forgot why you fell in love and got married. It's just become this thing where you just have this roommate that you're just coexisting and barely tolerating each other. We've had friends who've had to navigate the loss of a child,
Mm,
unimaginable things. So no matter what it is, any of those things can create this timer on this bomb. And I think bringing that counselor in, it's just bringing in someone trained that knows how to completely disarm it. But it's a process. It's a process. But I think that no one goes into marriage thinking, yeah, I'm okay. I'll just walk away someday. Like nobody goes into marriage with
no.
that idea. Everyone goes into marriage because they're head over heels, they're in love, and they have that romantic view of building a life together. And so sometimes you have to go back to what that picture first was and do whatever it takes to get that picture back again.
And some of the things you said, like being the most pressure packed relationship you can have. And I think that is so important for people to realize that when you're having all those challenges in marriage, it's very natural to get to that place in this world
Yeah.
because of all the pressure. And you also said about the attacks. And I think that as well, it's nothing wrong with you, but you're right. There's so many different things in the world that attack marriages without
Yes.
you even realizing they're attacking your marriage. And I feel like it's that how do you change your perspective to say, I'm going to quit fighting in my marriage and fight for my marriage. Like, how
Yeah.
do I switch that perspective? And that,
Yeah.
I do go back to what we said earlier in that movie that you have to watch, but the giving your fight to God. And that's what the movie was about, was,
Hmm.
giving it to God. Cause that I feel like, I not a lot of people open up about it, but how to get that friend of yours or that person that is in a bad place to say, like, how to get them to begin fighting for it when they feel
Hmm.
so far or so under attack.
Yeah.
But counseling is such a good option.
It is. It is.
And
And then prayer. I mean, I have friends who have always dreamed and longed of, their husband attending church with them. Maybe something as simple as that. Maybe their marriage is not in crisis, but maybe it doesn't feel as fulfilling as they hoped, you know?
mm-hmm.
And just the precious, beautiful surrender of just praying. I mean, not manipulating, not guilt tripping, not um, hanging guilt over your partner's head of all your unmet expectations. Um, but instead, just going to the Lord in prayer, bringing it to God, that you would trust God for your partner's change of heart or whatever's needed. And that can almost sound like a place like where you feel like, well, that's just giving up. But it's really not. It's really not.
No.
It's realizing that you've come to the end of what you can do, but you believe God can do so much greater.
And it's surprising what he can do.
Yes.
You letting you see what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so before, because I know we've been on for a while and I don't want to take your whole day, but just a few more things. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I talk a lot about, and I feel like the older we get, and some people experience this younger, how life can be so hard and so beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we miss the beautiful because of the hard. We're consumed with the hard, and we don't realize it is okay to experience the beautiful when you're going through something bad or something
Yeah.
bad's going on. Even right now,
Yeah.
some people are really, and it doesn't mean we don't have empathy, we don't help others, but I know when you were here and the time that we lived in the same town and we saw each other regularly and our lives were, all happening here, you went through hard. And I remember thinking at the time, hard and beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
losing your mom and having baby Gage, who I can't believe is 10.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something, I guess, how will you tell, how, based on, I guess, what you went through and what you've gone through in life, to let people know when they are in the middle of hard, how to help them see
Yeah.
the beauty and the joy, and see that even though we can be consumed and surrounded by hard right now.
Yeah. Um, that was definitely like such a dark season. Dark just as in I had never suffered such loss. I had never
Mm-hmm.
known that kind of pain. And I don't think you ever become familiar with pain. I pray not. But for me, it was a very unknown place. Like I felt like someone had just picked me up and dropped me off out in some, you know, big dark desert. And I just didn't know what any direction was. It all was a blur. And and it was crazy because, as you know, we already had four small kids, and my mom had been battling cancer for about 4 years. And it was the first day of preschool for our twins, who were our babies. And I remember saying to someone that morning, it might have been to you, Kelly, I don't recall, but we dropped off our twins for their first day of preschool, and everybody was making a big deal about it because we now had 4 kids in school. And we went home and took a pregnancy test. And I remember saying to somebody, yeah, we finally made it, but I think I might be pregnant. But it seemed too surreal. And it was just wild because I found out I was pregnant, and my mom had been doing well. I wouldn't say she was in remission because at this time she was diagnosed, her cancer was very advanced, but she was doing very well. She looked great, felt great. And so it was the month that I found out I was pregnant, probably the very next month. My mom suffered just some huge setbacks, and it literally, now I can say some of this in clarity with hindsight because walking through it, I had no clarity. But it was literally like as this life grew within me, like as my belly grew, we were simultaneously watching my mom's body die. And we were literally walking through new life and death. It's like within every moment, it was like we were step in step. And it was it was overwhelming. I just remember feeling like I couldn't breathe. I felt like the air had been taken out of my lungs. And I would just say to God, God, why? Like, I can't do this. I literally would just shout that. All 4 kids were at preschool, and I would just shout in my house, God, I cannot do this. I can't do this. I cannot welcome a baby into the world and grieve my mother simultaneously. Like, why did you do this to me? I can't do this. And, it was wild how it just continued. Was my baby Gage was born in April, and my mom was determined not to miss his birth, and they lived 8 hours away. And so it was wild, but they somehow made it to Florida. They wanted to be there for his birth, and I was terrified that she was going to pass away in our home, actually. And I remember I would call my best friend every night, and I would say, please pray with me that she will make it through tonight. I don't know how my kids would process a new baby and losing my mom all in the same week. Like, I remember literally calling a friend. I was that aware of how sick she was. Well, long story short, she ended up being hospitalized while they were there for Gage's birth, ended up having to go back home to be hospitalized, and ended up passing away when he was 4 weeks old. And so it truly was experiencing this joy of new life, and in the same breath, deepest grief I had ever known. And I needed a lot of help. I would say that I needed a lot of counsel. I needed lots of wise counsel. And some of my mom's friends stepped up without me asking and would call and just speak encouragement, speak affirmation over me as a mom, but then also just allow me to grieve as a daughter. They were like surrogates, really, in that moment. And I don't know that I have a secret solution to it, except that I had to fully do both. I mean, I had to, and it didn't make sense. I couldn't do it all in one breath, but I had to fully celebrate this life that God had gifted us with, this unexpected, precious baby who was literally a gift from God. Like, I would hold him in my arms, and it was like, I just knew he was God's promise to me. Like, it was just that reminder that even in the depth of what could have felt like abandonment, that not, I think sometimes in loss, what we feel is the abandonment of God,
Yes.
Why would God let that happen? Doesn't he see me? Doesn't he know I can't handle this? And yet in that same breath, I'm holding this miracle, and I couldn't deny this promise from God. And so And I feel like, I wish I was more of a Bible scholar and I could give all the answers as to why this is the case, but I feel often we do see that. We see loss and we see beauty. We see hard and we see beauty often in the same season.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I don't know. I don't have all the answers as to why, like, spiritually, that is. But I can say for me, that it really allowed me hope, you know, that in my deepest grief, like, God truly gave me something very tangible, literally a newborn in my arms, that reminded me I had so much to live for. And although a huge part of me died, the identity of being a daughter, and she truly was. Sorry.
Oh, Jenny.
Sorry.
Oh, Jenny.
I haven't gone there in a while, Kelly.
I'm sorry. And I
No,
didn't.
you can cut this part out, though.
I know. I do think
Whew.
all of what you just said was so beautiful, and the way, and being so deep in your faith, the way you described how hard that time was, it's almost to me like if you didn't have Gage, how like God had to throw that beauty at you
Yes,
to see it, even though you have
yes,
plenty of beauty. You already had four, and
yes,
Jonathan too. But
yes,
because it's your mom, and I remember you talking about your mom, and just what a person. I
yeah,
wish I had been able to know her more.
yes,
I think that God almost had to just really give you that beauty.
yes,
But for anyone that is in a dark time, to find some type of beauty,
yes,
or know it's okay to embrace beauty or
yes,
joy or good, or
yes. There is always,
there's always yes, there's always hope, and there's always a reason
there's
to
always
keep going
hope.
on, to keep living on, to
It's interesting because my mom, she always would quote, and I can't remember if it was Rick Warren or if it was his wife. But I want to say it was maybe from his book, The Purpose Driven Life. I can't remember, but my mom would always quote it. And so it was crazy when we were grieving her, how it was actually all these quotes she gave us all the time were like guiding me through. I could hear her voice. But it was about how, we think of life as like we're either in a valley or we're in a mountaintop, but life's really like just one long road, and there's like a ditch on either side, and we've got the good and we've got the bad, and they're running along the same road, you know and it's all like the journey is all one. And yes, it was a dark season, but I can't just go and classify it as that, because I received one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given in that
Mhm.
very season. And so I just feel like God, everyone's story is different. Everyone's story is different, but we've all known brokenness and we've all known loss. And the thing is, God can redeem anything. There is nothing so far gone that God can't redeem it. And so even though I felt hopeless, I wanted to give up. I honestly wanted to run away. Like, the pain was suffocating. Um, you're right. Like, God literally knew that I needed something tangible, like that tangible hope, you know, Gauge in my arms as the reminder that I was going to make it. Like, I could persevere. I could do hard things. I could navigate pain. Um, because he still had so much purpose in me, even if, not to minimize, but even if it was only to mother these 5 gifts he'd given me. If
Mhm.
that is all I ever did from that day forward, it would be a worthy calling.
And you said in the beginning, and you were talking about your kids, but it just came back to me that nothing at all can rob God's purpose for your life. So
Right?
yes, God threw something at you, but regardless of where you are, what you're feeling, what anyone is feeling, don't miss what your purpose is, or what God is throwing at you, or what God is showing you,
Yeah.
because you're so consumed with the hard or the challenge or the bad, or the because I think it's easy to become consumed with that. with,
Yeah.
all in the world, being a mom. It's hard in these day and age parenting, and, you know, let us still see the beauty, find the good, embrace the good, and not feel guilty or ignored in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to let you go soon, Jenny, but I do want to ask you, because I talk a lot in my blog, my podcast, about self care, and it comes in so many different forms and so many different things that we as moms can do for ourselves. Is there something that you would say self care looks like for you, or that you have to do in your life to make you, feel good and feel okay each day?
Well, this is probably the answer of most moms, but I finally accepted I have to wake up earlier. um, because I just really am more at peace and I'm a better person when I have solitude. And living in a house with 7 of us, finding solitude is never going to happen, ever, just accidentally. And so that's something I kind of accepted a couple years ago, was that I was always just trying to sleep as long as I could because I was always so tired or whatever. And that it actually was so much better for me, for my soul, for my mental health, actually to go ahead and get up, have coffee, have a few minutes to read my Bible, and just be able to take deep breaths, slow, deep breaths, um, before the hurry of the day um, would begin. Um, and then the other thing that I would say that I've been doing a little better at, and you would love this, is just getting outside and walking. Um, I've tried to do workout routines. I've tried to get to the gym. I've tried so many things. And during the season, I've just had to accept that, like, adding to my schedule, I'm not going to be able to really maintain it very well. Um, but what it does for my mental health to be outside rather than in a gym, being outside and just walking, 4 or 5 miles. And honestly, I don't even listen to podcasts. I just need to hear nature. I need to just be able to breathe the air. I don't talk on the phone. Like, that is more solitude, where I can just talk to God, and just be still, even though I'm moving. But you know what I mean? My my
I do.
my emotions can be still. And so that's probably the only two things that I'm doing well, like keeping in good practice right now. But that solitude, I don't think it matters your personality or your Enneagram or anything else, that we all need at least, a few moments of solitude a day to just be able to process where we really are with things.
I love that you said that, and I love exactly how you said it. I think that's my biggest push over the last year or so, is exactly that. And I try to tell a lot of people, around me, the same. And I think that has been the biggest help in my life as well. The exact two things you just said. The getting up earlier, like,
Yes,
I love my morning time. And
yes.
honestly, with Luke, my oldest, going to school now, this is a whole new season for me, because I loved homeschooling, and I never wanted to deny him to go to school, and he wanted to go to high school. And
Mm,
but my morning has changed, but I have to, no matter how tired, get up and have a
yes,
coffee,
yes.
and myself, and the walking too. Of
Mhm.
I've been walking more as well.
Wow.
And we need it. We all need it for this craziness of the world, the busyness of our minds, all
Yes,
the different technologies. And I just think it's our mental health needs the silence.
yes.
So thank you for that,
You're
Jenny,
welcome.
for telling us how that's working for you. So I just want to, is there anything else on your heart, or you want to share, that you feel like maybe we've missed or you're thinking about, before I wrap you
Well,
up and let you go about your day?
I can add this and you can just decide if it needs to be added, but maybe just one last encouragement, because I think we all need as much encouragement as possible right now.
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
And our word this last 6 months has just been grace. Like, to everyone who feels overwhelmed, which is every person I know, like, give yourself grace. And you may not be able to be as productive or efficient or any of the things you were prior. And prior meaning pre-COVID. I think this time really is going to be like a generational defining event. This is not
Mm-hmm.
something where everything just goes back. And so
Right.
to just give grace to yourself and to others. Um, and I think that grace, even as we talked about self care, grace is even allowing those moments of self care. Grace is allowing you to rethink your career. Grace is, listening to your child that is asking to homeschool because maybe the anxiety of being in school with the masks and everything is too much. Grace is just holding on to things loosely and just allowing that space, that freedom, that grace, that rest for things to shift and change, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where we're at right now. And I think it's the only way we're surviving.
Well, you said that all so beautifully. And I have to say, I feel blessed because you encouraged me today, for sure. And I know that this will encourage so many moms because you're just so calming, so practical, so real, authentic, which I love, but just always bringing us back to the Lord and how we're all going through so much similar things. And
Yeah,
it's okay to just stop being so hard on yourself, stop
yeah,
trying so hard. And the fact that we just, just spending more time in quiet and prayer
yeah,
and listening and talking with your family. It's the simple things of stop,
right.
letting everything else attack you and control you.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jenny, I also really want to ask you, just personally, I guess, if you're working on any certain projects or dreaming about something or just anything in the future with so much encouragement that you have to offer people.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. Well, it was interesting. I have a blog and I will just get really random, I guess, motivation or passion to blog. And it might be once a year, it might be once a month, but just occasionally I get these just really deep inspirations to write. And so a couple of years ago, I just really felt like we were actually on a flight home from California. My husband was asleep. I didn't have access to the internet. So I just feel like on a flight sometimes is my best time to be alone with God. And I felt like he just downloaded to me like the chapter titles of a book that I was supposed to write. And it was wild because I don't make decisions quickly. I'm one who can just over process. And then literally I like just opened a note in my phone. He gave me chapter titles, showed me what stories went in each chapter, and I landed and was so excited and encouraged. But I got really busy with life immediately, working full time and raising kids. And so I'm really kind of in a shift right now of laying down full-time work to prayerfully have some margin, have some space to write out those chapters, write out those stories I feel like I'm supposed to write. And I don't have the name of the book yet. I do have a few chapters written, but my prayer would be that I can have that completed and published in 2021. And so um, I don't know how to do that yet. um, but I just trust that, I just trust it will work out all in God's timing. Um, but the book, I just know that the root, the heart of the story is truly just about, it's just my story. And it's just the story of hope lost and then hope found. And, Kelly, we were living in the same area and had our kids in preschool together when I went through that season of all the hope I'd ever known was just shattered. And as I walked through that, and we actually had to move away, and my husband's work changed. But as I came out of that season, God just has really led me through like a 10-year journey of healing. That as much as significant as the crisis was that I went through, um, if my faith shattered, then what was it built on? If crisis could destroy my faith, then I really needed to walk through what was the foundation of my faith. Um, and I really discovered for the first time that I was the foundation of my faith. Somewhere along the way, I'd believed that life was great because
I deserved it, or my works, or my performance, or, and so when everything fell out, just literally the ground underneath me just disappeared. I didn't have ground to stand on. I realized I had to rebuild the foundation of my faith on Christ. I never had intended not to. But oh my goodness, it was just humbling to walk through the season of this good God I believed in, I thought had completely abandoned me. And so I really had to dig through and learn, who is God really and who have I made him to be, in my mind. And so anyway, all that to say that is the desire of my heart, is to really just write out how God restored my faith. God became my hope. And that there was nothing that could take that place. There's no sure foundation. There is nothing that can replace that space in our lives that is going to be unfailing and constant. There is nothing but the hope and the faithfulness of God.
Goodness.
So that's
So
so
much.
that's my heart. So I've had to put that on a shelf for a few years, and I just don't feel like I can anymore. I have to write it. I have got to have some space in, where I'm not feeling so stressed and so pressured in all these other areas of life. I've got to have some margin so I can just really journey that through and write it out, and prayerfully just share hope with others.
So first of all,
yeah,
I have like goosebumps, and I'm like smiling at the story of you taking it back off the shelf and actually writing it, and God giving you the titles and the chat, all of that. Like, it's just like, it makes me so happy. That's like it's a beautiful, inspiring story to anyone that I'm sure can feel exactly what you've felt. Because
yeah,
I mean, I feel like that's such a story that you hear from people
yeah,
in lives, and everyone's story is different when they feel like it came out from underneath them, and
yeah,
where was their faith when they needed it, all of that. Like, that just seems like such a relatable story.
yeah,
Just different scenarios.
exactly.
So I'm so glad that you are taking time to put this on paper and share it with others, because I just think you have a lot to share that could really touch other people's hearts.
Well,
So
thank you. And
thank you for sharing that.
oh, well, and in the meantime, I feel like a lot of my book, I will come out of my blog. I had the chance to meet an author a few years ago who I've admired for like 20 years. She's a speaker, author, and I got to ask her. This was really before God had given me that dream of writing a book, but I just asked her, like, how in the world do you just sit down and write a book? I mean, and she actually shared with me that God will lead her to go pick up old journals, look at old blogs, and he will show her how the stories all go together, you know. So it's not that she's sitting down to write a book and writing out content for the first time, but he's taking her back through where he's already been with her, and she's putting that all together. And when she said that, it was like something in my mind just clicked. This blog that has seemed so inconsistent and all over the place, it's where God's allowed me to share my story. And so I know a lot of the blog is part of the story of the book. And so the blog can be found at jennyspuler.com. And Spuler is a weird name, but it's S as in Sam, P as in Peter, Uler, Jenni with an I, jennyspuler.com. And so that's just where I've shared my story off and on that 10 years, actually. I started the blog in the midst of that crisis. Of course, I didn't really know my faith was in crisis yet. So you can kind of see a little bit of the journey there.
Well, I will definitely, first of all, put that in like the show notes of the podcast to find that
Okay.
jennyspuler.com.
Okay.
So, in that, just to clarify, you spelled it, but JENNISPULER.com.
Yes.
And I would love to hear more story about that author too. That's such a powerful testimony to, I feel like, we all talk about God speaking to us and pushing us and nudging us. And, I always make a big joke about my journals all over. Like, I have notebooks
Yeah.
all over the place that I write. And
Mhm.
so I think that's I love that that's what pushed her, and that you've been following her, and that you got to talk to her. So I
Yeah.
feel like that could be a whole nother conversation for another time.
Yeah, for sure.
And what about, and I know this is a future thing for you, but I feel like just so all of us can keep up with you and the story, is there anywhere social media that you mostly are that we could follow you just to keep up?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, and that's Jenny Spuler, and on Facebook. I think I'm on TikTok, but that would not be anywhere. I mean, that's just dances with my 17-year-old son. So
Yeah,
nothing really like deep or encouraging exists
right.
there for me. But and yeah, that's really it. Probably Instagram, and like anybody else, it's really just sort of the story of my life shown through my kids' activities. But it is where I share inspiration too, just when I feel like God's speaking something to me that I just feel could encourage somebody else.
Well, I'll tell you, it encourages me, and I'm not even really a good regular social media person, but I love when yours pops up, because I feel like I've filtered mine over the years to be sure that what pops up or what I have is all encouragement, because there's just so much in the world that I
Absolutely.
just want, if I'm going to put something in my head or my mind or in my time of my day, I want it to be encouraging. And so I love
Yes.
when yours pops up, because
Yes.
you are very encouraging.
Well,
Well,
thank you.
so I have taken lots of your time, and I've loved every minute of it, Jenny. I really, really appreciate you sharing your heart, and just taking time to share your story today with us and the listeners. I know that someone will be encouraged from it.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for the invitation. And it's just been a gift to get to talk to you so much. I've just absolutely loved every second.
I know. I think it was so wonderful when I first thought of you, because I just know that moms are out there that maybe the rest of us don't know, that have, stories to share. And I, selfishly thought I'd love to catch up with Jenny.
Yes. Well, and let me just say this kind of as a last thought you just said about moms out there. Kelly, you and I, we've always talked a lot about my mom, just because the season we were in together when I lost my mom, but just the incredible person she was. And something that she taught me, she was a therapist. And so she just always had something to teach, something productive she wanted us to
Mhm.
grab a hold of. And one of the things that was just like, from my earliest memory, I remember believing this, but she would teach us every single person has a story, you know, um, and so deeply in my entire adult life, I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I'm wanting to lean in and learn a person's story. So just because someone has a microphone, just because somebody has a podcast, just because somebody has maybe a voice, doesn't mean their story is more important or more valuable, because every single person's experiences matter. And I think sometimes for moms, especially moms, I think, who are staying home or homeschooling and just don't feel seen, don't feel, there's not a way they feel celebrated, maybe because there's not outside work where they're being celebrated, they can begin to feel like their story is insignificant and their story doesn't matter. And I mean, I just believe with all of my heart that our value to our Creator is just unparalleled. Like, each of us was designed and created with such love and such passion. And he pursues us, through this life. And so it doesn't matter where you are or what we perceive as value in a story in this human journey, but every single story matters, every single one. And so I think that's what's so beautiful about your podcast and you taking the time to talk with friends and professionals or whoever it is that you're bringing value in celebrating a person's story. And that just prayerfully translates to the listener that their story also matters.
I couldn't have said that better myself, Jenny. And I feel that that's exactly what I'm intending when I go out to, when I
Yes,
started thinking I just want to find people out there that maybe their voice isn't like being heard. Exactly. Like you
yes,
just described it. So thank you for that.
of
That
course.
was that was exactly the perfect way to end this, and that really does matter so much, because you're right, especially in these days, how many people out there feel that way. And I
Yeah,
feel like it just like you just want to tell them how much they matter, every single one of them.
yeah,
And moms, I know, can feel that way for sure. We're regardless. I know it. We've all felt that way at some point, probably, but some more than others. So thank you, Jenni. Thank you.
You're welcome. Love you, Kelly.
You too, Jenni. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I appreciate you sharing this time with me today. I am grateful you are here. And if you have anyone that you feel could also benefit from this encouragement, please share it with them today. You can also add a quick review on iTunes, which would mean the world to me and help me just to make this better for each and every one of you out there. I will be here each week, so please be sure to subscribe to the podcast or join me at kellyrenato.com to get the latest episode and more tools to help you on your journey to feel your best and enjoy every single day exactly where you are. I would love to have you join my journey, and let's all add good, healthy vibes anywhere we can, every single day. Enjoy your week and embrace the season you're in, and I look forward to next week. Take care. Bye-bye.